Wave management and trading are two of the key fundamentals that every top laner needs to know. Yet, it's much easier said than done. A lot of people, a lot of coaches will tell you you need to get better at wave management, you need to get better at trading, you need to get better at CSing, but how do you actually do it? Now, what most videos do, like pro guides and stuff, is they will take these challenger queue examples and showcase you the perfect way to manage the wave. What I thought would be better and more realistic for the majority, let's say 99% of players who are playing in Diamond and below, is to take a real game example from a gold top lane solo queue game and actually show you everything that's going wrong and going right. Now, in this review particularly, it's only a 12-minute clip. It's just focusing on early game laning phase. It's a melee matchup versus a range matchup. So it's Shen versus Kayle. And while that does have its own dynamics, obviously range versus melee, there's some slight nuances with wave management. The principles and the core things I'll be going over can be applied to any matchup in top lane. Cool. So the auto attacks, talk me through auto attacks straight away while Kayle's not in lane.
So I wanted to push the wave to get the level 2 advantage.
Yep.
Because I know I'll just harass her because she's very, 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 like, she's one of the weakest champions early.
Yep.
Because she doesn't have any range. So if I just get the level 2 advantage very fast, I can just keep harassing her from getting any CS later on, even though I'm pushing.
Okay, cool. I'll want to see how your push... Okay, cool. You pause it for a little bit. Good. Okay. I like this. Good. So you're not super fast pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh, I guess she started.
Yeah.
No, I just realized. Looks like Trundle started red.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see if Trundle comes. Have you ever considered starting E level 1 as Shen against like matchups like Kayle?
I did, but I find it pretty bad.
Okay.
It is interesting because you can taunt her and whatever, but then you just do just a tiny bit of damage.
yeah.
Going to heal it back with.
Okay. Nah, cool. That makes sense.
Maybe if we're invading, I would definitely go E.
Yeah. So my auto attacks, this is why I was worried about the auto attacks, because look at the wave position right now. Yeah. So you're going to get level 2 right, but she can kind of sit very close to her turret. So it'll be interesting to see. Ideally, you want to hit this level 2 right, because if you look at this, I guess the minion lead you have isn't that big, right? Because you've just got an extra minion here, but HP-wise, it's pretty similar. The reason why I didn't like the auto attacks is just because you're going to push it too far. Ideally, you'd want to be hitting level 2 and the wave's still almost dead even. So I would have suggested coming back and just doing a few less auto attacks. Because really, all you need to get level 2 is one more auto attack than her, right? Ideally, you'd want, let's say, 3 or 4 more auto attacks, so she's not going to hit level 2 as you go for the trade, if that makes sense. But you can basically plan out your level 2 within auto attacks. And what I want you to get into the habit of, particularly against Kayle where you need to abuse it, and you want to abuse that level 2, is making sure that you don't over auto attack at the start, because it sets you up for a little bit of a problem here. So what I would have done is probably just done those 2 auto attacks. Maybe, like one more. And then I would have not auto attacked again here.
Oh, you mean that one? Yeah.
Yeah, and then we missed that one, which is fine, because now look, our melee minions, we're too far ahead, right? Because there's 2 minions here, and she's got no melees. So ideally, you only want to be like almost like half a health bar of melee minion ahead of her to get level 2 first, if that makes sense. Sure. Because right now you're like basically a whole melee minion ahead. You only want to be half an HP bar ahead. Is that a good, like, does that make sense in your head of like visualizing and using it as an indicator? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because with the Kale, we know we're eventually going to get outscaled, so we want to make sure that our level 2 is like as clinical as possible, and we can push the early game advantage that we have like as consistently as possible. Cool. Yeah, every time she goes up for CS, punish her. Nice. I'd punish her on this one as well. I know if she goes for an E, that's fine. Cool. See, notice like how. See, notice this trade now. Like not terrible for you, but you take the turret hit because this lane's just a little bit too far. I mean, yeah, you didn't have to take the turret hit, but that's entirely preventable if the wave's here. And you notice now what's happening with your wave is, so she's going to get all this free time to farm under a turret, which is not really what you want as a Kayle, like want against a Kayle, right? Ideally, you want the matchup to be where you're making her work for every single CS and you're like auto-attacking her every time she goes for an auto-attack. But you can't really do that when the minion wave is under her turret, right?
Tower,
Yeah. So that's why that first push is so important, because now for the next like 1 to 2 to 3 minutes, this wave is going to be really safe for Kayle, and you're playing almost to how she wants to play the lane, if that makes sense. Because you're a level 2, level 3 Shen, right? Like you push the wave in. Like it's not like you can really go roam. Like you can't do much. So she's really happy with that because she can't get poked by you or attacked, and she gets free CS while you're having to just sit there and let her, scale. Cool. As you can see now, I mean, lucky she's not the best at auto attacking. Which is a good thing. She's missed like every single CS there.
Yeah, that's generally gold for you.
Yeah.
UNE gold.
Yeah. Cool. So Oryx top side. Nice. Tristana gets first blood. Again, we see these trades just suck for you because you're under turret every time you go for the trade, right? And she actually wins that trade. Yeah. Cool. And now this lane dynamic changes a bit, because you've only got the Doran shield and a health pot, and she's got 1 charge left on her corrupting. So yeah, really important that you understand that wave, like I guess theory, because it sets you up for success for the next like few minutes of the game. But that's a good trade. And now none of these trade windows are ideal now because she's got a slow push going. So realistically, you don't want to really trade with her anymore, which is, again, why that push wave is really bad, because when you push the wave into her, she gets to see us under turret, but then her wave builds up and now it pushes into you. And that's great because you can zone her from CS with that. But the problem is if you go for a melee trade on her, her minions are basically another champion. It's basically like a 2v1. Like if you look at how many minions, like these all do 26, 12, 12, 12. She's doing what? Base 59. This is more than a Kayle basically damaging you. And every time you go for a trade, you're going to have to face basically a 2v1 of damage. Cool. Just kind of make sure you're not using your shield pointlessly there, because you probably could have got that CS. It's like a little thing, but just make sure you're using your shield correctly here. Because now you don't have it for this trade, and you didn't have it to get that CS. Cool, is she going to stay here? She could back and TP. Yeah. So that's another thing we don't like. Okay, she doesn't go for the TP, that's good. Yeah, I'd be trying to thin this wave out as much as possible. But you can't really with Kayle there. I'd just be auto-attacking as much as I can here, because you want this wave to get thinned out as possible and before it gets under your turret. Cool. Now, the one good thing about this dynamic is if Warwick comes and ganks, it's going to actually be really good for you. The only problem is you can't help him contest the scuttle, which is another, I guess thing we should talk about. So with this wave, the problem with your bounce here and then the bounce back means that at 3 minutes 15 or, I guess it's 4 minutes 40 now, you can't actually help Warwick contest scuttle. So the wave is really important to keep in the middle because it gives you the option if Warwick's here when scuttle spawns at 3:15, you then have the option to come and help him. Because you and Warwick as a 2v2 versus Trundle and Kale, you win that every time. And if you've got wave priority, you can then actually make this a 2v1. In this situation, like, it's at 4 minutes 40, so Warwick had no chance of getting this Scuttle Crab. But as you get higher rank, as a top laner, you're going to need to play that first 3 minutes to 3 minutes 15 with the scuttle in mind, because the jungler is going to be really looking towards you, particularly when you get higher rank, for you to be able to support them. Because for a jungler, scuttles are really important for them, not just like economically, but also like theoretically in their heads. They get really angry. I jungle a lot, and if I lose my scuttles, I get really angry. And they won't get angry at you, but they just get annoyed at the fact that they couldn't contest the scuttle because their lanes didn't have priority, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so this wave should never happen against a Kale, because what you're doing now is you cannot trade against this Kale. She gets priority. She can do everything she wants. So we're playing towards her win condition, not our Shen win condition. So yes, you can say you're up 4 CS and you're probably going to be up like 7 or 8 CS. But when we're versing a Kale, it's not enough to be up just 7 or 8 CS. Ideally, you want to be up like 10 to 15 CS, plus you're harassing her as well. So that's why that wave theory at the start, and I'm keep going back to it, but it's really, really important. I mean, I mean, like, yeah. Warwick can't really get angry at you there or anything because you couldn't help him. And he died to the 1v1 anyway. Cool. Now, the only problem here is we don't know where Trundle is now. We can assume he's recalled, but he could be waiting for a gank here. And again, we've got this slow push. So notice what we've done with this wave now for the first 5 minutes. When you create a push into the enemy turret, it then bounces back, and then it then bounces back. So it's like a really easy theory to understand of, if you push your wave in early and it hits the enemy turret, it's then going to push back to you, hit your hit your turret, and then it's going to keep bouncing back until something in the lane happens. Either you get a kill on the Kale, you both recall, or the jungler comes in and manipulates the wave. So we don't really want this bouncing back against a Kale because it suits her at every single stage of the game. If it's pushing into her, it suits her. If it's pushing into you, it suits her because she's got all the safety as that's happening, unless you've got your jungler waiting here as she's pushing you. Whereas if you've got this always dead even, you can be constantly threatening her and making her fight for every single CS pre-6. If that makes sense. I know I'm rambling a lot about the wave management, but it's like your biggest opportunity to punish the Kale.